Chapter 821 Extra, Changing Destiny 3. The crowd was shocked to hear that beating and abusing women and children would result in a beating with a stick at the least and jail time at the worst, because there was no such law in the past. There were many men beating their wives. As long as it was not too serious, the wife's family would usually intervene, and the husband's family would be afraid and restrain themselves, and promise not to do it next time, and the matter would be over. This is also the reason why women always rely on their parents and brothers. Even if their family sucked their blood, they would not dare to make things too awkward with their family. After all, how well one lives in the husband's family depends on whether one's family supports them. The emergence of those demons who support their brothers and their families, as well as the deep-rooted idea of favoring sons over daughters, are all due to this reason. Not to mention that parents want to have sons. Even sisters want their parents to have sons. Otherwise, when they get married, they will have no brothers to support them, and it will be a waste of time if they are bullied. After reading the law, Wen said, in addition to this one about Yuan Mainyang, I think everyone should also know the content of the first article of Chapter 17 of our Dajin Law. That is, as long as a woman applies, and the government verifies that she has not concealed or lied, she can establish a female household. When everyone heard this, they started to discuss it. It is not impossible for Dajin to establish a female household, but the conditions are very harsh. Not only does the woman have to have no male descendants to rely on, but the clan leader, village leader and village head also need to sign and agree. Agreeing to establish a female household means that the village and clan have to allocate a piece of housing land and protect the safety and reputation of the woman in the household. Which village or clan leader is willing to do such a thing that reduces the vested interests of men? Chapter 17. Article 1. After saying this, Mrs. Wen looked around with a serious expression and waited for everyone to calm down before she continued. Women also have the right to inherit. After hearing this, some of the onlookers couldn't help but ask, doesn't this mean that when parents die, girls in the family can also inherit the property? Those who only have daughters and no sons will not be left with no children. Hush. Be quiet. Then Mrs. Wen held the document and said loudly, when parents die, if there are unmarried women, or if there are only daughters in the family and no men, the parents' property will be inherited equally by their daughters. If all the daughters are married, it will be added to their daughters' dowries. The documents of the Great Gene regulations will not be written so directly, but when the crown princess read the regulations to them, she did so. Now Wen and Ma understand her intention. Not many people can read. If she reads in a flowery way, who can understand? And staring at the documents and reading out the straightforward words is to let the people know that what she said is written in the regulations. And it is a very serious matter that everyone must abide by. After Wen finished reading this sentence, Ma said, did everyone hear it? Women can set up a female household and have inheritance rights. If Yuan divorces, she does not need to go to her parents' home. She can set up a female household herself. Her future property can also be inherited by her daughter. In addition, Sun Baojian abused women and children and violated the law. Our Women's Federation has reported the case, and the government will punish him. She lowered her head and asked Yuan Mainyang, Yuan, what do you want to say? I want to divorce. I want to set up a female household, and I want to take my 2 daughters away. Yuan Mainyang said. If it were any other time, Sun's mother would have jumped up and down and scolded Yuan Mainyang. But now she was worried that her son had violated the law and would be arrested and taken to the government office. She was so anxious that she wanted to sneak into the house and let her son hide in the chaos. But she didn't expect that as soon as she looked towards the door of the house, her eyes widened. 2 Yamen runners were escorting her precious son out. As soon as Sun Baojin saw Sun's mother, he cried, Mom, save me. I didn't do anything wrong. Why are you arresting me? The crowd watching the scene was immediately shocked. They were frightened when they heard that there were such regulations in the laws of the Great Jin dynasty. But before they could recover, they saw Sun Baojin being arrested. And it was not the maids brought by these ladies who arrested him, but the Yamen runners wearing Yamen uniforms and wearing waist badges. These Yamen runners from the 5 cities military command often patrol the streets, and they all look familiar. These are not pretending, but the Yamen runners in the official Yamen. The Yamen faces south. Don't come in if you have a reason, but no money. Once you enter the Yamen, it will be difficult to get out. You will be dead or alive. Sun's mother was shocked and ran up to hold the Yamen runner. Sir, my son has not committed any crime. You can't take him away. Huh? No crime? The Yamen runner pointed at Yuan Mainyang and said, You are almost beating someone to death. How can it not be illegal? He pushed Sun's mother away and said, Don't make trouble, or I will arrest you too. Sun's mother didn't dare to provoke the official, and rushed to Yuan Mainyang again. Mainyang, you can't do this. Bao Jin is your husband and the father of your child. If you put him in jail, who will you rely on for the rest of your life? Please ask the ladies to release Bao Jin. He won't dare to do that anymore. We, mother and son, will definitely treat you well and never beat or scold you again. Madame Ma and Madame Wen looked at Yuan Mainyang. Ed Wang was worried that Yuan Mainyang was bewitched. So she said quickly, Mainyang, you have to think it over. If you back down now, the Women's Federation will not care about you anymore. No one will know if you are beaten to death. Mother's son was so angry that she pointed at Aunt Wang and was about to scold her. But Ma shouted at her, Shut up. She lowered her head and asked Yuan Mainyang, What do you say? No. Let him go to jail. I want a divorce. Yuan Mainyang was very determined. Ma's face finally showed a smile. Good job. We women should be like this. She stood up and said to everyone, No matter what, you have to stand up on your own. If you can't stand up on your own, no one can help you. And you will only be bullied and beaten by others. As she said that, she waved to the two Yamen runners. Let's go. The Yamen runners dragged the maids brought by Sun Bao Jin, Ma, and went to carry Yuan Mainyang and hold the two children, and walked towards the North City Military Command. A group of people followed behind, intending to watch the excitement. The establishment of the Women's Federation and the changes and additions to the laws of the Great Jin Dynasty were supported by Princess Shangda, Empress Sun, and the wives of the major wealthy families and officials in addition to Zhao Rushi. Once the Women's Federation was launched, the officials in the Yamen had to support them whether they wanted to or not. Not to mention that Mr. Chen in the command was Ma's husband. At this time, Commander Chen had already received the letter and was waiting in the Yamen. The group entered the Yamen. Yuan Mainyang confessed herself. Aunt Wang was a witness, and the injuries on Yuan Mainyang and her two daughters were physical evidence. There was no need to say more. Sun Baojin was convicted. Sir, we are willing to pay silver and money to atone for our sins. We are willing to apologize to Mainyang. We are willing to redeem our merits. Sun's mother cowed up beside him. Commander Chen looked at his wife. Ma asked Yuan Mainyang, what do you say? On the way here, Ma had communicated with Yuan Mainyang. Yuan Mainyang directly put forward the conditions they had negotiated. I want a divorce. I want to take my two daughters away. They also want to give us 15 taels of silver as medical expenses. Commander Chen slammed the gavel. Sun Baojin, if you are willing to agree to Yuan Mainyang's conditions, then you could be given a lighter sentence, and you will be sent home with only 10 strokes. Originally, according to the law, Sun Baojin was to be beaten with 25 strokes and imprisoned for 6 months. Now he no longer has to go to jail, and 15 strokes have been reduced, so his life is safe. Although Sun's mother was very distressed about the 15 taels of silver, and deeply hated Yuan Mainyang, who had caused them to this point, for being out of control, she was still willing to let her son not suffer. Without waiting for Sun Baojin to speak, she shouted, We are willing. We are willing. Chapter 822 Extra, Changing Destiny 4. Sun Baojin pressed his fingerprints on the divorce agreement and was beaten with 10 boards. Sun's mother paid a neighbor to carry him back home, and the matter was settled. Yuan Mainyang and her two children were sent to the resettlement house of the Women's Federation by Ma and her family. The Women's Federation used the funds raised to buy a courtyard with 7 or 8 rooms near each Women's Federation, and resettled women and children in need for free. But it was just a temporary resettlement, for a few days. In the next few days, they will arrange the way out for these women and children, and send them to a new place. You stay here for a few days to recuperate. When you have rested, we will discuss your next placement. Ma said, Don't worry. There are servants here who will bring you and the children meals on time. You can also tell them if you need anything. Yuan Mainyang had a miscarriage and had been tossed around for so long. She was exhausted both physically and mentally. But she hadn't settled down and didn't know what to do next. So she couldn't rest at ease. I want to ask, what should I do next? Yuan Mainyang said. Ma has seen many women like Yuan Mainyang who have left their husband's family, don't know their way out, and have no sense of security. Seeing that Yuan Mainyang insisted on asking first, she sat down in front of the bed and said, "You can go directly to the textile factory, train for a few days, and then work and get paid. You could also go to the Women's Technical College to learn some skills. I suggest you spend some money to learn some skills. With skills, you can support yourself at any time. Once you have chosen, you can rent a house nearby, and we will help you register as a female householder." If Yuan Mainyang did not get compensation from the Sun family, the Women's Federation would still give her a living allowance, enough for the three of them to live for a month. After receiving her wages a month later, she would be self-reliant. But Yuan Mainyang received 15 taels of silver as compensation from the Sun family. Although living in the capital is not easy and everything is expensive, but if you spend 15 taels of silver frugally, it is enough for them to live for a year. So the Women's Federation did not provide this subsidy. It was also based on this consideration that she was suggested to study at the Women's Technical College. The Women's Technical College requires tuition, and there is no income during the study period. The Women's Federation cannot take care of all these. People still need to be independent. The money of the Women's Federation is not blown by the wind, and it must be saved to give to more people in need. Ma explained the pros and cons of the two options to Yuan Mainyang in detail. Yuan Mainyang knew that the tuition fee for the short-term training course at the Women's Technical College was only 100 coins. After graduation, if the skills are good enough, the technical college also needs people. And you can go to the workshop to work if you can't go to the workshop. It's also good to do some small jobs outside. This is better than working in a textile factory. She thought about it and decided to join the short-term training course of the Women's Technical College. For the next 10 days, Yuan Mainyang sat in the small courtyard for a short period of confinement. 10 days later, she took the child and went sure to take a carriage to the Women's Technical College. After visiting the Women's Technical College with Wenshur and learning about several majors, Yuan Mainyang chose to use a sewing machine to make clothes. She was good at sewing. Whether before or after getting married, neighbors would come to her for advice when they wanted to cut clothes. After she married into the Sun family, in addition to taking care of all the housework, she also made clothes for others. But sewing clothes by hand was too slow. The sewing machine designed by the Crown Princess was very magical. As long as you move your hands and feet, you can sew needlework that is twice as fine as hand sewing. And the speed is incomparable. Yuan Mainyang heard that after she finished her studies, in addition to working in the garment workshop of the Women's Technical College, she could also take jobs home. She only needed to pay a deposit to rent a sewing machine, and then pay the rent every month. During the month, she was studying at the Women's Technical College. Her two daughters could go to the nursery of the Women's Technical College. But after that, she had to take care of them by herself. She still had money in her hand, and she could afford the deposit of 10 taels of silver. She could rent a sewing machine and do the work at home, in addition to doing the work in the garment workshop. She could also take orders from outside. Hearing that Yuan Mainyang made a decision quickly and had a very clear plan for the future, Mrs. Wen was relieved. She said, "Your family came to us a few days ago and asked us to hand over their daughter and granddaughter. What are your plans for them?" When she heard the word "my family," Yuan Mainyang's eyes turned cold. "If possible, can you not tell them where I'm going?" Fearing that Mrs. Wen would misunderstand that she was unfilial, Yuan Mainyang explained, "They never care about my life or death. They only want benefits from me. Otherwise, the Sun family would not dare to torture me like that. That day, Sun Baojin beat me to a miscarriage, and the neighbors told him that they came to ask for benefits, took the compensation grain, and left without even looking at me. Now they are in a hurry to find me, just to take away the 15 taels of silver in my hand, and then marry me again and get another betrothal gift." Seeing that Yuan Mainyang was very clear-headed, Mrs. Wen was relieved. The Yuan family went to the Women's Federation the day after Yuan Mainyang left with them. But they knew about the situation of the Yuan family, and knew that they did not really love their daughter, and were worried about her. In order to let Yuan Mainyang take good care of her health, they were also worried that Yuan Mainyang would be soft-hearted and give the money to her family. If she lost this opportunity, she would never be able to stand up again. The people from the Women's Federation threatened and educated the Yuan family, delaying the time, and wanted Yuan Mainyang to come to the Women's Technical College to see how others were self-reliant, and then told her about this situation. "Okay, since you said so, then we will block it for you," she said straightforwardly. The people from the Women's Federation told the Yuan family that day that after Yuan Mainyang came out of the government office, she took her daughter away. They didn't know where she went. If the Yuan family comes again, they just need to stick to this statement. Since you have decided to learn sewing, you can enroll after paying the tuition, the teacher of the college said. Yuan Mainyang paid the money and, with the teacher's introduction, rented an extra room in the small courtyard shared by her classmates. She got up early and took her daughter to the college, sent her daughter to the nursery, and went to the sewing class to study. She ate lunch and dinner in the college cafeteria, which was economical and affordable, and she didn't have to buy vegetables, cook, and clean, saving a lot of trouble. As the eldest daughter, Yuan Mainyang helped with housework since she could walk, whether in her parents' home or in her husband's home. She was like a cow and a horse, and never had a relaxing time. Until then, she felt that life was so easy and beautiful. There was no endless work to do once she opened her eyes. No endless complaints and scolding. Moreover, she could see the end of her life at a glance, which gave her only despair. And she worked numbly to live her life, and lived day by day. But now, Madame Ma, Madame Wen, and the teachers of the college have painted a bright future for her. And she feels that there is a bright road ahead, as long as she works hard to move forward. Not only she, but also her daughters can live a good life. So she is full of energy. Chapter 823 Extra, Changing Destiny 5. Now there are many students, but the workshop needs only a limited number of people. It is not easy to enter the college's workshop. Only the top 1 or 2 students in the training class are eligible to compete. Yuan Mainyang's hands are naturally skillful, and she is smart and learns things quickly. She knows that this is her only ability to make a living. In the future, whether the 3 of them, mother and daughter, can live well depends on her ability. So she works harder than everyone else. In addition to taking classes, she can also practice sewing machines after class for a period of time. She never wastes this little time. When the sewing machine room was closed, she would think about it in her mind. The 2 daughters probably suffered too much in the Sun family, so they are very sensible at a young age. Especially Dia, who did a lot of things when she was in the Sun family. Now she follows her mother here and lives a life without being beaten or scolded. She is so happy. She doesn't need her mother to worry about her and takes good care of her and her sister. When Yuan Mainyang saw this, she felt particularly sad and studied harder. Peaceful days always pass quickly, and the 1-month training period passed quickly. Yuan Mainyang won the first place in the exam. The first place can work in the workshop. Working in the workshop, there is a fixed basic salary, and a bonus will be given according to the workload. Compared with renting a sewing machine to take orders, the income is more stable. And with the workshop to rely on, there is no need to worry about the Sun family and the Yuan family causing trouble. Yuan Mainyang naturally chose to work in the workshop. Madame Ma and Madame Wen were very happy for Yuan Mainyang when they heard that she won the first place and stayed in the workshop. Yuan Mainyang settled down near the college. She still rented the same house, although she had to share a yard with other people. She had company, and everyone knew that it was a yard rented by the college, so they didn't dare to cause trouble. And she didn't have to worry about safety issues. Otherwise, if a young woman who was divorced and brought 2 children came with a gangster, her reputation would be ruined. She worked during the day, and at night, she would take her daughter to the college to attend literacy classes. The Women's Technical College would hold literacy classes at night, specifically recruiting female students. The fee was not expensive, only 21, and you could study for a month. If you passed the exam, you would get a diploma. Yuan Mainyang worked quickly and diligently. When she got her wages at the end of the month, she received 300 won. The rent was not expensive, and all the meals were eaten in the college cafeteria. The college cafeteria was a bit charitable, just to balance income and expenditure. So the food was good but not expensive. After deducting these expenses, she still had half of the money left, which paid back the tuition and daily expenses she paid some time ago. Holding the money, Yuan Mainyang cried and laughed. Such a good life was something she could never have imagined in her dreams. As life became better, she thought of her sister Lan Yang from her mother's family. Her parents had 3 daughters before they had a son. She was the eldest. Lan Yang was the second. and the third was given away. No one knew where she was sent. In the eyes of their parents, she and Lan Yang existed for their younger brother. They had to work for the family since they could walk. When they reached a certain age, they would be given a dowry to save for their younger brother to marry in the future. When they got married, their parents still hoped that they could get money from their husband's family and send it back to their parents' home for their parents and younger brother to spend. This was the whole meaning of her and Lan Yang's existence. When her parents chose her husband's family, they didn't consider the other party's character, family background, or whether their daughter would have a good life after marrying. They only looked at which family gave more betrothal gifts. Widow's son was mean, and son Baojian was a mama's boy who was incompetent and had no future. Both mother and son were famous in that area. But just because they gave a high betrothal gift, her parents married her to this family. Her days in the Sun family are Lan Yang's future. When Yuan Main Yang was in her natal family, she and her sister worked like slaves for her parents and brother. After she got married, the only person she cared about from her natal family was Lan Yang. So now that she is living a good life, she wants to pull Lan Yang out of the fire pit. She is worried that Lan Yang's life will be ruined by her parents. After thinking about it, she took the time to go to the Women's Federation and told Madame Ma and Madame Wen about the situation. The Women's Federation has only been established for a year, although many methods have been used to promote the concept of women's independence. The inherent ideas are not so easy to change. Many women are clearly being abused at home, but they are unwilling to accept the help of the Women's Federation. People like Yuan Main Yang are forced into a corner and only think about fighting. Now that she has realized her mistake, she wants to help her sister from her natal family. Naturally, Madame Ma and Madame Wen support her. Madame Wen is in charge of Yuan Main Yang's case, and she is also in charge of Lan Yang's case. She asked, "How do you want to help your sister? Are you willing to pay money or do your work?" "I am willing to pay for her to study at the Women's Technical College, and I will cover the food and accommodation expenses during the training period. When she learns, she can earn money to support herself and save some money for her dowry. It's better than staying at her parents' home and being sold by her parents." Hearing this, Mrs. Wen was very satisfied. The Women's Federation is not a charity organization, and there are thresholds for helping people. For someone like Yuan Main Yang who was desperate and couldn't get money from the Sun family, the Women's Federation could give her some money to help her. But for Yuan Lan Yang, this is not possible. Now that Yuan Main Yang is willing to pay to help her sister, it will be easy. The next day, Mrs. Wen went to the Yuan family and told Yuan's parents that Yuan Main Yang had found them, and said that she paid 200 coins to the Women's Technical College to help Yuan Lan Yang learn technology. If the Yuan family agrees to let Yuan Lan Yang go to school, the money will be effective. If the Yuan family disagrees, the Women's Technical College will return the money to Yuan Main Yang when she comes to ask for it. When they heard that it was the eldest daughter who gave the money, the Yuan family's parents were immediately happy. In the past 2 months, they have been asking around for Yuan Main Yang's whereabouts, and from time to time, they have been squatting at the door of the Women's Federation. But to no avail. Unexpectedly, there is news about the eldest daughter. She is also willing to marry and support her younger sister. Yes, we are willing," Yuan's mother said. There has been no news for 2 months. And now he is not personally supporting his sister, but through the Women's Federation. Yuan's mother knew that her eldest daughter was determined to break off the relationship with them. Yuan Main Yang has made up her mind, and the Women's Federation is backing her up. I'm afraid it won't work if they want to get the 15 taels of silver from Yuan Main Yang and marry her off again to earn the bride price. Now that there is a benefit, it is natural to grab it quickly. Since Main Yang is willing to support Lan Yang, it means that she still cares about her sister. Later, Lan Yang can find out about Main Yang and then take it slowly. That's fine. Mrs. Wen didn't care what the Yuan family's parents were thinking of. She told Yuan Lan Yang to register at the Women's Technical College tomorrow and left. Yuan Lan Yang sympathized with her sister's experience and only hated that she couldn't help her. Now that her sister had just settled down and thought of her, she was very touched. She also knew what her parents were thinking of. So she went to the Women's Technical College and didn't look for Yuan Main Yang or ask about her. When her parents asked, she just said there was no news. Yuan Main Yang secretly met her sister a few times. Yuan Lan Yang knew that she was not as capable as her sister, so she did not learn sewing, but directly learned the use of textile machines. After a month, She entered the textile factory as a female worker. The textile factory was far from home and needed to work overtime. So she used this as an excuse to live directly in the female workers' dormitory of the textile factory. She only went home during the holidays. Yuan's parents asked her to hand over all her wages. Otherwise she would not be allowed to work. But the textile factory had signed a contract when Yuan Lanyang entered the factory. And she would have to pay a penalty if she did not go halfway. When the manager of the textile factory went to the Yuan family to talk, the Yuan family parents obediently let their daughter go to work. Yuan Lanyang was thus freed from her parents' control. Even when her family arranged a marriage for her, she ignored it and found a marriage through her coworkers. Yuan Lanyang saved some dowry and could still earn money after getting married. Therefore, the man also valued her and was willing to pay a lot of betrothal gifts. Yuan's parents knew that they could no longer control their little daughter. And it was good enough that the man was willing to pay the betrothal gifts. So they agreed to the marriage. Mainyang. Is that Mainyang? Yuan Mainyang, who was shopping with her two daughters, heard the voice and turned around to see that it was Dong, the daughter-in-law of her neighbor when she was at Sun's house. Dong's situation at her husband's house was similar to her situation at Sun's house. And the two were of similar age. So they were close and had a good relationship. Sister-in-law Dong. Yuan Mainyang was relieved to see that Dong was alone. So she called her and asked her two daughters to call for help. Dong saw that Yuan Mainyang and her two daughters were all wearing new clothes. The three of them were white and plump, with smiles on their faces, which was very different from when they were at Sun's house. She couldn't help but ask, Are you married? No, Yuan Mainyang said. I work in a textile factory. To avoid trouble, she didn't tell the truth. Working can really support yourself? Dong asked. Yes. Yuan Mainyang hoped that Dong could resist fate like herself. So she told Dong about the treatment and other conditions in the textile factory. After Yuan Lanyang got married, the two sisters visited each other more frequently. Yuan Mainyang knew the situation in the textile factory very well. I have something else to do, so I'll leave first. After saying that, Yuan Mainyang said goodbye, looking at Yuan Mainyang's back as she walked away. And her two daughters, who were chattering and much more lively than before. Dong's face showed a resolute expression. She was going to find the Women's Federation. She also wanted to divorce and work in a textile factory. Chapter 824 Extra. System 200,121. You're back? The one who spoke was a round ball. The system has no body in the real world. Just a bunch of data, appearing invisibly in the host's brain. But when they returned to the system bureau of the Crossing Rebirth Department, they had bodies, which were spherical like eggs. There would be a small light screen on the top of the sphere, which displayed their numbers. So even though everyone's body was the same, they could still recognize who was who. System 200121 turned around and saw that it was his friend with the number 200553. He smiled and responded enthusiastically, Yes, I'm back. You just came back too? The previous golden fingers of the Crossing and Rebirth Department were portable grandfathers and portable spaces. But these are outdated now. The most popular thing now is the system. So their system bureau is now the largest and most glorious department of the Crossing and Rebirth Department. Not to mention the male frequency. Even their female frequency has more than 100,000 systems, which belong to the subdivided departments below. The 200121 system and the 200553 system were manufactured in the same batch, and both belong to the sweet pet room of the Book Crossing Department. At the beginning, the host that 200121 encountered was too difficult to lead, and the points it got were too low. It was only after 200,553 comforted and encouraged it, and found a way for it, that it regained its spirits and accepted the new task. Congratulations! You have the highest points in this task, and you are the first. The 200553 system said enviously. They also have rewards. The higher the points, the more rewards. And the first place winner will get an extra reward. The round sphere of the 200121 system showed a complex and nostalgic expression. It remembered the woman who never followed its ideas and never bought anything in its mall. But she was always the hardest worker in earning points. In the end, before she died, she knew that the system would be destroyed after she returned to the modern world with her husband. So she used up all her points. She bought recovery pills, agility pills, strength pills, and flavor pills for each of her sons. daughters, and grandchildren. If someone loves painting or music, she would buy them color identification pills and sound identification pills, and directly use up all her accumulated points. Even though Zhao Rushi became the queen and queen mother, and was over 90 years old, she still insisted on practicing calligraphy and painting every day. She was the most diligent among the more than 100 hosts that 200121 had led. So she also had a lot of points. This led to 200,121 returning to the System Bureau and finding that he was ranked first on the scoreboard. This is the first place in the Female Frequency System Bureau, not the first place in the Sweet Pet Room. The heroines in the Sweet Pet Room are basically naive and innocent. They only need to know how to be spoiled by the male protagonist and spend the male protagonist's money. Why do they need to work hard? The system of the farming room next door generally has higher points than the Sweet Pet Room. But now, the system of a Sweet Pet Room has a much higher score than the first place in the farming room, which almost shocked everyone. How did you do it? Do you have any experience to share? 200553 intends to learn from his friends. It's not my credit. It's the host herself, who works harder than the heroine of the farming novel. 200,121 said. I had a malfunction as soon as I left the system department, and I was confused, thinking of being fooled by the host again and again. 200121 wanted to laugh, so I didn't successfully turn the host into the heroine of the Sweet Pet novel, but was tricked by her to work together. 200553 became more and more envious. This is simply a win without effort. You know, even in the farming novel room next door, many hosts are not so hardworking. They have to issue tasks through the system and use task rewards as carrots in front of them before they are willing to work hard. 200121 What kind of good luck is this? To meet such a hardworking host? Please share some experience with me. What kind of host should I choose to make it so easy? Next time I bind a host, I will also set the conditions. It said. 200121 thought for a while. First of all, you have to have a high IQ. 200,553 nodded, took out a small notebook from somewhere, and wrote it down. You can't be in love yet. 200121 said again. 200553 wrote it down again. But after writing it down, 200121 didn't say anything for a long time. What else? 200553 couldn't help but ask. No more. No more. 200553 couldn't help but widen his eyes. 200121 was worried that his friends would misunderstand that he was hiding something. So he quickly explained, before we bind the host, don't we have to fill in the main conditions? At that time, I filled in the highest IQ value. As for the love brain, I never thought about it. I realized it later after staying with my host for a long time. Think about it. Women think about how to fall in love all day long. How can they work hard to earn points? 200553 was puzzled, but women just want to fall in love and want to be loved. So they have an urgent need for beauty pills and slimming pills. Right? If they don't fall in love and work hard to make money every day, do they still need us? 200121 was silent. Zhao Rushi, that woman, really doesn't have much need for it. The biggest significance of its existence is to be a gossip teller. Besides, will people with high IQ listen to you? They are clear-headed and have their own ability to make a living, without relying on external things. Things like beauty pills are not a necessity for them. They even think that being too beautiful is a burden. 200533 said again. 200121 was silent again. What he said made sense, but he was speechless. Isn't that the woman Zhao Rushi like this? But as the newly promoted #1 boss, it will not be defeated by just 2 questions. It said, you are right. They don't need beauty pills, but they will need agility pills, strength pills, sound identification pills, taste identification pills, and other things. Because they have high IQs, they can learn anything quickly, and their points level will rise immediately. They earn more points once than those idiots earn 10 times. And they are often diligent. And they will immerse themselves in what they are obsessed with. And they will not get tired of repeating it hundreds or thousands of times. So even if they don't have a demand, their points will rise rapidly. Although this makes sense, it still can't solve 200,533's doubts. Just as it was about to ask again, it saw a ball floating over. Seeing the number on the top of the ball, 200533 hurriedly greeted it. 200,001. Haven't you gone to do the new task yet? This one was produced in the same batch as them, and won the first place in the first mission. 200533 always regarded it as a big boss. 200001 nodded to it, and when it looked at 200,121, a complicated expression appeared on its face. It said, "You are back too?" Seeing this system, 200121 was more convinced of what he had just said. This 200001 is Zhao Ruyu's system. Although it was originally a big boss, it had a lot of experience in doing tasks. However, in the time and space of Dajin, it was bound to Zhao Ruyu and was suppressed by itself. Because Zhao Ryu died in his 70s, the 200,001 system came back earlier than it. After 200121 came back, he looked at the scoreboard. 200001 ranked 72nd in this mission. After Zhao Ryu was changed by Zhao Rushi, she worked hard to earn points in the later period. Otherwise, the ranking would be even lower. Having strengthened his belief, 200121 did not stay any longer. It said, "You guys chat. I'm going to apply for a change of department." Change department? 200533 was shocked. "Where are you going to change to?" "I'm going to change to the farming room next door," 200,121 said. As a system that has been brainwashed by Zhao Rushi, it now feels that the products in the Sweet Pet Studio Mall are not very useful. And if it is asked to instill the idea of becoming beautiful and slim to please men into its host, it will feel sick. Or the farming studio is more suitable for it. Watching his friend leave without looking back, 200533 was about to persuade him. And then he heard the big man 200001 said, "Wait for me. I will go too." As he said that, he chased after 200,121's back. 200533 opened his mouth and fell into deep thought. The two first-place big men have transferred to the farming studio. Should it also transfer there?